Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about a term that is being used more and more often anytime something that is even remotely bipartisan happens up on Capitol Hill. We're going to do this because I got a message about it. So we'll go through that message, talk about the term for a moment, and then we will answer that message with another message that came in just a few minutes later. And the difference is, it's kind of pronounced. Okay, so here's the first message. When you said Uniparty in a recent video, you scoffed. Let's be real. There is zero difference between the two parties. Pretending there is just perpetuates the Uniparty. Got it. It exists. If you say it doesn't, you're helping it. Understood. This term, it comes out now anytime something bipartisan happens. And the general implication is that the two parties are the same. They have no difference whatsoever. And that it's all a show. That the differences, the perceived differences between the two parties, they don't really impact those of us out here. It's just a show to keep people engaged and make people think that there is some difference between the two. Here's a message that came in just a few minutes later. I hate to start off this way, because seeing somebody who looks like you say, I said what I said, when somebody told you that a person was trans when you just called her a woman, was fuel for a month. But it's relevant. I'm a trans woman, and I'm honestly terrified of November. Is it just me, or are my so-called allies throwing me under the bus right now? It's not just me either. It's women's reproductive rights, it's gay rights as a whole, it's unions, it's education. What happens if that guy wins and appoints more to the Supreme Court? Am I just messed up for life? I support the Palestinians. I also live in a state where Republicans cut food aid to low-income people here. I see people who a year ago told me they'd hide me if needed, now saying they're going to vote in a way that actively harms me. It doesn't even help the Palestinians. Trump has made it clear he'd be worse. It's just to punish Biden. But it's not punishing Biden. He's a millionaire who will go home. It's punishing me, women who need health care, and everybody else they said they'd support. I want to just scream it to the world, but nobody will listen. Well, you just told like 10,000 people or more, so I guess tens of thousands. And I'm sure there's going to be some commentary about that part of it. But let's go to the actual discussion here. There's no difference between the two parties, right? There is zero difference between the two parties. I'm going to go out on a limb here. If you believe that, and you're saying it in this way, meaning this thing, I'm going to guess that we are pretty close demographically. That if they divided the country up and made us stand, next to each other based on our demographics, we'd probably be pretty close to each other. People who aren't part of that demographic are, quote, terrified. Terrified. And there's a list of differences here. There is a list of differences. Very tangible differences that impact people out here. It's not a show. There are differences. But there are also similarities. And that's been the way it is for a really, really long time. There are some things that in most functioning places are viewed as above politics, things that don't get politicized, because it's just the accepted outcome as what's good for the country. One of those things for a long time was public health. We see what happens when that gets politicized, right? Other things are large-scale economics. Both parties agree on that. National security, foreign policy, those items. Those things that steer the country. Those things don't turn on a dime. Yeah, they're pretty much the same there. But that doesn't mean that the parties are the same. It doesn't mean that they don't have an actual impact on people's lives. And you have divergence within those things that are the same. But generally speaking, it's pretty small when you're talking about this one. Because I know somebody's going to ask, would Trump really be worse? I mean, Trump's main criticism so far is that they let the footage out and they didn't do it fast enough. But somebody could easily say, well, that's just Trump saying something. Look at his policies. Yeah, I mean, look at them. Actually do that. There is a difference. I think the most pronounced would be the Pompeo doctrine. See, for, 4 decades before Trump, the United States viewed the settlements as inconsistent with international law. I think that was the terminology used. He did away with that. Said, no, the settlements are fine. Biden switched it back. Yeah, there are differences, but they're not huge. Trump said the settlements were okay. Biden says they aren't. But somebody is going to point out, well, Biden really didn't do anything after saying they weren't. Foreign policy doesn't turn on a dime. It's a little shifts. But that doesn't mean that the parties are the same. There are differences. I know that there's going to be people that want to talk about the rest of it, and how this person feels. I can't speak to how they feel. They did, and I think they expressed their point pretty well. Whether you agree with it or not, I guess that's up to you. But this is a conversation that is definitely getting lost. So when it comes to the idea of the Uniparty, sure, you will always be able to find things where the two parties, agree. But if you expect the two parties to actually always disagree, what you are really saying is that your party is right, okay? Which most people believe their party is right. But you're also saying that the other party is always wrong. So much so that even on basic things, they can't agree. If you say that a uniparty exists because there is some kind of bipartisan cooperation that occurs at some point, deep down what you're really saying is that you expect two alternate realities to exist for the two parties, right? They can't ever agree on anything. Realistically, the two parties have never been further apart. You've had some legislation move through lately that has been bipartisan. And because of that, people are saying, look, they feel the same way. It's because it has to go through the House, which is narrowly divided, which means the only legislation that will go through is stuff that they both agree on. It's not that the parties are suddenly the same. It's just that the only legislation moving forward is stuff that they can both agree on because it has to go through the House. there is a very marked difference between the two parties, particularly for those people who do not fit neatly into the standardized boxes. It's a really big difference for them. If you are somebody who, for lack of a better term, is privileged, if you are somebody who fits into the demographics of white, straight, all of that stuff, yeah, right now, I mean, reproductive rights is pretty huge. I mean, even for that demographic. Education is unions are pretty, there's still differences. There's still pretty big differences. So I would, before you really lean into the idea that the two parties are exactly the same, or that there's zero difference, I'd maybe give it a little bit more thought and look at it from the point of view of people who aren't just like you. If you can't find anything that is different for you, that changes your life, maybe look at it from a different point of view, because there are definitely differences. And the more I think about it standing here right now, I can't think of anybody that doesn't have a real difference. It doesn't matter your demographic. It's just maybe easier to overlook because it's not as dramatic if you are privileged or if you have that standardized demographic. There's a difference, and it really matters to a whole lot of people. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.